Hello, this is a demonstration of how to do a simple search of the Medline database using the OVID access to Medline via MUSE. So this is the home page of MUSE. All I've done is log in so far. So the first thing I need to do is go to the Library tab and click. And then on the right hand side of the screen I've got various e-resources that I can link to. To get to Medline I need to go to the subject databases list. And then I need to go to the alphabetical table. So I've said I'm going to do a search of Medline, so I'm going to click on the M button, and then I'm going to click on Medline via OVID SP. There are some other ways of searching Medline that you can try, but for the purposes of this demonstration and for general use we recommend OVID SP, so I'll click on that. And now on the right hand side of the screen I click on Connect to OVID SP. So after it's had a little think, it comes up with a list of all the different databases that OVID gives access to. So if I scroll down a little bit, you can see here are all the Medline options, and I'm going to go into Medline, in process and other non-index citations, and Medline from 1948 to present. That's Medline in its entirety, all the records that you can search. You might not need to search back as far as 1948, but we can limit our search once we're into Medline, so that's the one I tend to use every time. This has launched the basic search screen of OVID, but I'm going to come across and click on Advanced Search. And when we're in the advanced search screen, it means we've got the option of using subject headings, and that's quite important when we're searching. So first of all, I'm going to do a search for the topic obesity. So I type in obesity, and because there's a tick here where it says map term to subject heading, when I click on search, it's not just going to find me all the papers that mention the word obesity, it's going to search for a subject heading for obesity. So here we are, it's given us a choice of possible subject headings that we might want to use here: anti-obesity agents, obesity, abdominal obesity, obesity, hyperventilation syndrome, morbid obesity, and so on. To the right of each term we've got the options to explode or focus, and then last of all we've got a column called scope. If I click on the little blue eye symbol where it says scope next to my the best match for my term, obesity, a new window will open up and it defines what obesity is for me, so I can just check that this is the right subject heading. So it tells me what obesity means. It gives me some related subject headings that might be interesting to me. So you can just use the scope note to double check that the subject heading that it suggested is the right one for you, or if you've got a list of subject headings and you're not sure which one to choose, going into the scope note can help you decide. Now if I go back to the previous page, if I click on the term obesity in blue, a long list of words and phrases appears. This is called a subject heading tree, and all the hundreds of thousands of subject headings that describe all the different diseases and treatments and conditions are all listed in these trees, which are really just long lists of words and phrases going from very general things like anatomy down to more specific things. And if we scroll down, highlighted in blue, here's the term that I've chosen, obesity. So we know that there are some more specific subject headings related to obesity. We know they're more specific because they appear underneath the term obesity and indented to the right. We also know that more generally than obesity, there's subjects like overnutrition and malnutrition, nutrition disorders, that's even more general, nutritional and metabolic diseases, that's even more general. To the right of each subject heading there's a number, and that tells us how many papers have that subject heading. So there's 93,664 papers about obesity at the moment. To the right, these two boxes, they're the explode and focus boxes that we saw on the previous page. So now if I click on the explode box, which is the first one, and if you're doubting me, if I just scroll to the top of the page, you can see there's the column headings, explode and focus. I'll go back down. If I explode the subject heading obesity, I'm going to get these 93,664 papers plus all the papers that have one of the more specific related subject headings as well. So I'm going to get everything about morbid obesity, abdominal obesity, and so on, these 4 terms here. That means that we're going to get a really big set of papers, even bigger than 93,000, but we can be sure that we're not missing out anything that's about obesity, pretty much. On the other hand, if I click on focus, I won't get the papers with any of the more specific related subject headings. It's just going to search for the papers that have the subject heading obesity. And of these 93,664, it's only going to bring back the ones that it thinks are most focused on the subject of obesity, which are all about the subject of obesity. And the way it does that is that when the indexers who work for Medline are reading articles and making lists of all the subject headings that need to describe each paper, once they've done that process, they can go back and from the list of subject headings they've compiled for an individual journal article, they can pick out a few of them, usually just 3 or 4 at the most, which are the most important, the major subject headings for that paper. And when we click on focus, we're saying, just bring me back the papers where the indexer has marked this subject heading as being one of the major subject headings. So one of the things that this paper is chiefly about. So when you focus, you get a smaller, more focused set of papers. In this case, I'm going to explode. I'm going to do a very sensitive search where I find everything about obesity. So if I go back to the top of the page and click on continue, I'm now offered a range of subheadings. So these are different aspects of obesity that I might be interested in. So for instance, I might be interested just in psychology in relation to obesity or mortality in relation to obesity. If you're interested in these specific things, you can click on them individually, but sometimes doing this limits things a bit too much too early on, so be cautious. I'm not going to use any subheadings today, so you can use them if you want to, but if you find you're getting 0 papers, it might be because the subheadings are just limiting things a bit too much. So I'll just click on continue and leave the subheadings out. So now I'm back at the home page of Medline. I can't see my search history, but I can see the first couple of results for my search on obesity. And if I want to see my search history, where it says search history, 1 search, click to expand, I'm just going to click there. And now my search history appears, so I can see here's my search for the subject heading obesity exploded, with a set of results of 103,079. Now obviously I don't want to look through 103,000 papers, so I'm going to look for some more specific drug treatments for obesity, and I'm going to look for a drug called Orlistat. So I'll click on search again, same process as before. Now it hasn't found an exact match for the term Orlistat, hasn't found a subject heading for it. It's found some related subject headings, and it's giving me the option of searching for any of these. So for instance, the first one that it's found is called lactones. So I could look at the scope for lactones. It explains what lactones are and what their action is. So at this stage I can just click on previous page. So if I know that lactones are what Orlistat is, that's the action that Orlistat has, I could carry on my search now. I could explode or focus lactones and continue. I could choose one of the other related terms if I was interested, or if you're certain that none of the subject headings are right, at the bottom it will always give you the option of searching as keyword, and what that means is it really will just search for words, search for papers where the word Orlistat, spelled exactly that way, is simply mentioned somewhere. So I'm going to do that in this case. So I click on continue. So now I've got a set of papers about Orlistat and a set of papers about obesity. So to combine those two together, I click on them both. And here it says under the search history, combine selections with, and I've got and or as my choices. I'm going to combine them with and because I want papers that are both about Orlistat and obesity. So I click on and, it has a little think, and now it's found 675 papers, so it's a much smaller set. I could add in further terms to limit my search a bit more, or I could use the limit functions in Medline. Here under the search box it says limits, click to expand. If I click there, it gives me some options, so I can limit to papers with an abstract. That's helpful because sometimes the title alone isn't enough to enable you to decide whether a paper is relevant. English language, again that's often helpful to just have English language papers. Full text, this will limit to just papers that are available for me to print out right now. Depending on what kind of research you're doing, you may or may not want to limit to that. Obviously, it makes your life much easier, but you can't not include papers in your research just because you couldn't get the full text immediately. There are always other ways of getting papers via interlibrary loans and so on. But if you want to, if you click on full text, then you know you're going to get a much smaller probably set of papers which are available to you immediately. So I'm going to choose full text in English, and I'm going to choose to limit by publication year. So I'm going to go quite recent. I'm just going to say I want papers from 2005 to 2011. So now, having chosen these limits, I can click on search. You've got a box here that says additional limits. If you go into that, you get even more choices. But I'm just going to leave it at that for today, just full text English and 2005 to 2011. So now, if I click on search, it's applied that limit to the last search in my search history, which was my 675, and limiting it to just the last 5 or 6 years, and English and full text has got me down to 30 papers. If I click on display to the right hand side, it will then show me the first of these 30 papers, and you can see for each one there's a link to the PDF, so I know that I can read that article immediately. And that's pretty much how you go about doing a basic search of Medline, combining terms together, using the subject headings and the subject heading trees, and applying a few simple limits.